Former Golden State Warriors head coach and New York Knicks point guard Mark Jackson has revealed the truth about being brought up in the New York Knicks head coaching search, and it is becoming very clear what the New York Knicks are looking for in a head coach, and with that comes an update on Johnny Bryant and also one on Mike Brown, as now it's very clear what the Knicks are doing here, what they're looking for, and what they will be going for as this head coaching search continues, and we're going to break all that down. There's a lot to go over. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Knicks Digest. It's Chris here. If you guys are part of that 72% that's not subscribed to Knicks Digest, make sure to subscribe for daily videos like this. You guys have been killing it recently. Thank you so much for all the support. We're closing in on 18K. Let's try to get there before the NBA draft next week. Also my birthday, June 25th. Let's try to get there, but let's keep up the great work. And more importantly, let's talk some New York Knicks basketball. Mark Jackson, someone who is one of the fan favorites anytime there is a head coaching vacancy in basketball, but specifically when it pertains to the New York Knicks, was mentioned and implicated in the New York Knicks head coaching search, and Jackson has finally responded to this noise. Now Jackson, he coached 3 years with the Golden State Warriors, and there was a lot of good and a lot of bad at the same time, and we will go into all of that, but at the same time with Jackson, every time the Knicks have had a head coaching vacancy, literally dating back to when Jackson got fired by the Warriors and replaced with Steve Kerr, once it was revealed that Kerr would not be joining Phil Jackson's New York Knicks, fans turned towards Mark Jackson, and after the Knicks fired Derek Fisher, who Jackson ended up hiring, and then also subsequently did not continue forwards with Kurt Rambis, also, fans called for Mark Jackson. Outside of that, after Jeff Hornacek got fired, we saw fans call for, you guessed it, Mark Jackson. And once the Knicks fired David Fizdale, and then we're in the process of looking towards Tom Thibodeau, you want to guess who a lot of Knicks fans were calling for? They were calling for Mark Jackson over there. That's who has been one of the most popular name every time the Knicks have a head coaching vacancy. And this is not just the case with the Knicks, it's the case with a lot of teams, as people do believe heavily in Mark Jackson, but Knicks fans love him the most because of his ties to St. John's and also his ties to playing for the New York Knicks, being their point guard for the beginning of his career. Now, it was mentioned by Rick Pitino that Rick said, I obviously coached our Rookie of the Year, Mark Jackson. I believe he spent 18 years in the NBA as a player. Great coach with the Warriors and one of the brightest minds I've coached. Would love to see the Knicks bring Mark Jackson home. Now, we went over this comment before already with Rick Pitino. This is nothing new right here. However, there was a thought that, well, Rick Pitino has already said he doesn't want to be the Knicks head coach, and he's advocating for Mark Jackson. The Knicks obviously respect Rick Pitino. Leon Rose respects him. Everyone respects Rick Pitino. So there was this thought that, well, with the style of coaches the Knicks are looking for, it would make sense for them to be at some level interested with Mark Jackson. Now, Jackson responded to what was said there, saying, he's a legend. I love him to death. I'm not in the league 17 years playing if he's not my first coach. I'm forever grateful, and he's coach to me. He's turned over St. John's University and turned back the Hall of Fame time to bring them back to their glory days. It's great to watch. It's fun to watch. He's one of the greatest coaches in history of sports, not just basketball, and on top of that, he's got great taste by that statement. So Mark Jackson was asked when this statement was brought up on SiriusXM how he felt about being named and if he was interested at all. Jackson seemed to not really give much away about what's going on, and it makes you think either two things. One, it's a very classic Leon Rose move in silence like lasagna moment, or I guess I should have said real G's move in silence like lasagna, not just move in silence like lasagna, but we all know the Lil Wayne roll, or Lil Wayne line. I can't speak. It's kind of a tongue twister. But look, we all know that it's one of two things with Leon. Either that, or the Knicks have no interest in Mark Jackson whatsoever. Now, I have an opinion here that I don't think a lot of people share. I don't like the idea of Mark Jackson coaching the Knicks at all, if I'm being honest. Outside of that, I would be shocked if the Knicks are interested in Jackson right now. It just does not make a ton of sense to me for the New York Knicks to be interested in Mark Jackson. Now, we saw Stephen A. Smith also call for Mark Jackson to be the head coach, saying, I'm going to always mention the name Mark Jackson. That man was responsible for building the Golden State Warriors before Steve Kerr was brought in and took over and piggybacked off of that. First of all, Steve Kerr didn't piggyback off that. He completely changed the style the Warriors played, but we're going to get into that for a little bit anyway. I know that when I make these videos on Mark Jackson specifically, he does have a very very good fan base out there who believes in him as a coach. And so I know I'm going to get these angry comments. It's not lost to me. People are going to tell me that I don't know basketball and I don't know what I'm talking about and that I'm an idiot and I should stop making YouTube videos or something along those lines. I read the hate comments last time I mentioned Mark Jackson, said I didn't like him as a coach. So I'm ready for him. But look, I just don't see it. I get he's a great defensive coach. I'm not going to sit here and say he isn't, but it's just I don't see it. I really don't think a guy who hasn't coached in 10, 11 years now and has gotten a dozen interviews, if not more, is the right guy for the Knicks. There was some thought, well, if Johnny Bryant didn't get that Suns job, why should the Knicks try to hire him? Clearly he wasn't good enough. Dude, Mark Jackson interviewed for I'm pretty sure the Knicks interviewed him around the time they hired Fizdale in 2019, 2018 that was, so clearly, there was some level of interest harbored at the time in Mark Jackson, and the Knicks decided to go another way. So, just taking a look at this wonderful analysis by Charlie Cummings on Twitter. We're going to make this bigger to emphasize the point and also so I can read it a bit easier, for being honest. My eyes are not perfect, but they're not bad. Look, Charlie Cummings said, if there was one thing that Mark Jackson thrived at, it was constructing defense. In his 3 years coaching the team, they were 27th in defensive rating, then 14th, then 4th. To this day, many players and Steve Kerr himself credit Mark Jackson with building a defensive identity for Golden State, which is absolutely correct to do so. A lot of this had to do with personnel. The new GM, Bob Myers, worked with Jackson, acquiring Andrew Bogut and Monta Ellis in their first offseason together, then Andre Iguodala in the next. This coincided with increased playing time for Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. On top of that, so you have a championship-level defense being built. There's an emerging star backcourt in Steph and Klay Thompson. David Lee is still handing out buckets on the block shot, David Lee, and passers like Bogut, Green, and Iguodala are keeping things flowing. Why couldn't this offense take off? And the answer was the ball didn't move, plain and simple. In Jackson's last season with Golden State, a 51-win team averaged the fewest passes per game in the league. The beautiful game the Warriors we remember was as stagnant as they came offensively under Jackson, and that was intentional. His philosophy was simple. Let good offensive players attack defensive matchups repeatedly until it stopped working. You'd see a few possessions in a row for Steph, and then David Lee, and then for Klay, and on and on. It made them very easy to stop. And on top of all that, this does not include repeated assertions that people inside and outside the organization were out to get him, and the implication that his status as a man of considerable faith, meant those of less faith would tear him down. He asserts the notion to this day when asked. And now that we have a clear picture of the tenure, Jackson built a great defense and empowered the young players. He also failed to evolve offensively. On top of that, his conflicts of interest and interpersonal skills consistently failed to hit the mark. That adds up to firing. And every year his name comes up in a coaching search despite 10 years on ice and in the broadcast booth. And every year, the reasons he lost his job are seemingly entirely forgotten. People only remember that he built them up before Kerr took them to greatness. Now, a little thing here as well that he mentioned is this is arguably the reason why Jackson was canned, was all the offensive issues. And that on top of that, there's not just that. Most people know that the tactical reasons of Mark Jackson lost his job to Steve Kerr and why the two were not comparable in terms of X's and O's at all, because Kerr was all about that. Few remember how the two were night and day different in their off-court demeanor. Now, I don't talk about Mark Jackson's off-court demeanor a lot because, frankly, to put it in the best terms, for lack of a better way to say it, as someone talking about the Knicks here, and this being off the basketball, off the court situational stuff, it's hard for me to, for lack of a better word, win. Regardless of what I'm going to say, someone's going to have a problem with it. Regardless of what most people are ever going to say about anything, someone is going to have a problem with it. We know that Jason Collins is the first player in history to be openly gay and play in an NBA game. Mark Jackson didn't like that. You could read yourself what he said. I'm not repeating it, but he was not a fan. And it's because he's very Catholic, and that is common amongst people who are devout Catholics to be anti-LGBTQ. So, because of that, we saw an issue. The Warriors' COO was open about his sexuality since 2011 when Jackson was first there. And Jackson made some comments about not only Jason Collins, but also the owner. Now, he didn't say I hate them as people, but there was a phrase that he said, not in my locker room, so it becomes that is hard to navigate. You put that man in New York, it's going to be an issue. Madison Square Garden is in Chelsea. Chelsea is a neighborhood with a very, very high percentage of people who are very accepting towards that community or are in that community. It becomes hard because those questions are going to be asked. It becomes the Colin Kaepernick situation where you need this to work because the media is going to be all over the off the field, off the court stuff. Now, they're two completely different situations, and I'm not really going to talk on either of them, but they're still media. They're still enticing to the media, essentially. And because of that, things become difficult. So that all kind of shapes it out to where it's tough to hire Mark Jackson. And also, the fact is his offense didn't pass the ball. They had a similar style of Tibbs, which was attack weak defenders on ISOs, something that the Knicks wanted to move away from. So all of that means Mark Jackson is not going to be the head coach of the Knicks. Now, also speaking on a different guy who there's been a lot of noise about. Well, first of all, Mike Brown plays a part in this. But we also have more updates on Johnny Bryant. As we know, Johnny Bryant seemingly does not seem like the favorite for the Knicks head coaching job anymore. And it was mentioned by Ian Begley that it's more of a longer shot there with Johnny Bryant when you're talking about the coaches that have been in or will be in for interviews. Those guys that have much higher odds of landing jobs, landing this thing than Johnny Bryant. And Begley said, I don't think that's a shot at Bryant. It's just the reality of where he is and where he would be if the Knicks hired him, which is a first-time head coach. He was the associate head coach here, had a lot of close relationships with players, particularly Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley. None of them are here anymore. I'm sure other guys as well. By all accounts, he's done well in Cleveland, but I don't think he's an odds-on favorite at this moment at all here. At the moment, I think it's a longer shot. Maybe the Knicks go through the interview process. They decide it's not Taylor Jenkins, it's not Mike Brown. You shut the door on Jason Kidd. He stays in Dallas. Maybe your criteria changes, but where we stand right now in the middle of this week, Begley does not think Johnny Bryant is anything more than a long shot for this job. On top of that, Michael Scotto did mention that after being a finalist for Phoenix's head coaching job, Cavs associate head coach Johnny Bryant is expected to return in Cleveland. All of this leads up to it not feeling like Johnny Bryant. However, the Knicks clearly do want a head coach who has experience head coaching, which is one of the reasons why many people want Mark Jackson, but the media frenzy, outside of the fact that his offense and style in general is too similar to Tibbs, it feels like a really bad idea, if you ask me. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I expect a lot of people to disagree with this video. Obviously, last time I spoke about Mark Jackson, there was some comments that got insane. It's going to say it was a back and forth. It was nuts. So, yeah, just let me know in the comments down below. I hate addressing real things that aren't basketball, man. It's so much less fun. I want to talk basketball. But this is basketball, so let me know what you think. Like this video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Thanks for the constant support. Have a great day, and go Knicks.